teacher refused to lock down. During a real school shooting, even blocked the light switch while gunshots got closer. When I begged her to let us hide, she said, "Sit down or you're expelled." I just stared at her. That was 1 year ago. Last week, she was let out of her apartment in handcuffs. I was in Ms. Brown's AP history class when the lockdown announcement crackled over the PA. Lockdown, lockdown, this is not a drill. We'd done this drill 100 times since kindergarten. Lights off, hide in the corner, stay quiet. Simple. Everyone started moving automatically, but Ms. Brown stepped in front of us with that look she gets when someone questions her authority. "Get back to your desks, now." Her voice had that edge that meant business. I didn't approve any lockdown drill today. I raised my hand out of habit. "But Ms. Brown, we're supposed to. The only procedures you follow are mine. Sit down, or you're all getting zeros on your presentations." Then she launched into her whole "I've been teaching for 25 years" speech. The one about respect and how her generation didn't need constant hand-holding. Here's the thing about Ms. Brown. She was one of those teachers who was super strict about weird stuff, but lazy about actual teaching. She'd mark you absent for being 30 seconds late, but give everyone A's on essays she obviously hadn't read. I once turned in a paper with a whole paragraph about SpongeBob in the middle just to test it. Got a 98, so most of us sat back down. Nobody wanted to risk their GPA over what was probably just another drill. But then the announcement repeated. "Code red. This is a code red. All staff and students follow lockdown procedures immediately." That never happens in drills. They announce it once and that's it. My stomach started doing this weird flip thing. The same feeling I get before a big test I didn't study for, except worse. I kept glancing at the door. The hallway was still bright, fluorescent lights blazing. In drills, teachers always turn off their lights immediately. Then I heard it pop, pop, pop like firecrackers, but not. Everyone's phones started buzzing at once. I pulled mine out under my desk. My boyfriend Tyler was in chemistry 2 halls over. His text made my blood freeze. Hiding in supply closet. Someone has a gum. Where are you? More texts flooding in. Behind filing cabinet in main office. Under Mr. Garcia's desk. I showed Ms. Brown my phone. My boyfriend says there's someone with a "I see what's happening here. You think you can stage some elaborate prank to get me in trouble? Get me fired?" The popping sounds were getting louder, closer. Someone screamed in the hallway. Not a fun scream, not a playing around scream. "That's probably drama class practicing," Ms. Brown said, but even she didn't sound sure anymore. I could see Mr. Peterson's class across the hall. Lights off, no movement, just darkness where 20 kids should have been. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. "Henderson won't let us hide. Still at desks. Tyler." "What?" "Get to safety now." Ben tried next. Sweet Ben, who never argued with anyone. "Ms. Brown, please. This feels real." "Feelings aren't facts, Ben. Sit down." More running in the hallway. Lots of feet, all going the same direction, away from something or someone. The PA crackled again but cut off mid-word. That's when we heard the shots. Not pops anymore. Bang, 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 like someone slamming a metal door, but sharper, louder, real. I stood up. "We need to hide now. Sit down or you're expelled." Ms. Brown moved to block a light switch. "I will not lose my job because you children want to play games." Something in me snapped. "I don't care." I sprinted for the lights. That's when everyone lost it. Half the class rushed to the safe corner. The other half froze at their desks, torn between a lifetime of following rules and that primal voice screaming danger. Ms. Brown grabbed at my arm as I passed, but I yanked away. She was yelling about disrespect and consequences. "You're all being hysterical. This paranoia is exactly what social media has done to you. Manufactured fear." But we weren't listening anymore. Desks scraped across linoleum as we barricaded the door. Someone was crying. Someone else was praying. The kids who'd frozen finally scrambled over, cramming into our corner. 23 teenagers trying to become invisible. Everyone except Ms. Brown. She stood at her desk, arms crossed, fury radiating off her. The doorknob rattled. Everyone stopped breathing. The handle turned. Locked. Thank God, locked. A shadow passed under the door. Paused. We could hear breathing on the other side. Or maybe that was just my heart pounding in my ears. Footsteps. Moving on. Those were the longest 10 seconds of my life. The SWAT team found us 40 minutes later. Ms. Brown was still babbling about how we'd overreacted to a simple drill. And a week later, we finally found out why. Because that's when they told us who the shooter was. Jake Wilson from my sophomore English class. The quiet kid who sat in the back corner drawing anime characters in his notebook. The paramedic wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm while I sat on the gurney outside, my whole body shaking like I had hypothermia even though it was May. She kept checking my pulse and asking if I could breathe okay, but all I could think about was Jake walking past our door, Jake with a gun, Jake who I'd lent a pencil to last week. Detective Santos showed up with her badge and notebook, crouching down to my eye level while asking me to walk through everything that happened in Ms. Brown's room. I told her about the announcement, about Ms. Brown making us stay at our desks, about the sounds getting closer. She wrote everything down, nodding when I mentioned turning off the lights myself. The parking lot was chaos with parents running everywhere, news vans setting up, ambulances leaving with their sirens on. Mom crashed through the police tape still wearing her hospital scrubs, mascara running down her face as she grabbed me so hard I couldn't breathe. She kept touching my face, my arms, checking for injuries that weren't there while demanding answers from Detective Santos about how a teacher could keep kids exposed during an active shooter. Tyler's mom was there too, crying and hugging him over and over while he stood there looking blank. Detective Santos brought me to a quieter spot and pulled out her tablet, showing me screenshots of my text to Tyler about Ms. Brown not letting us hide. She said 23 students had already given the same story, that Ms. Brown kept insisting it was fake, even after the gunshots started. 2 kids died in the math hallway, she told me. 3 more were at the hospital, all from rooms that followed protocol immediately, except for one girl who got grazed by a bullet that went through a door. Dad showed up and took over from Mom, leading me to his truck without saying anything. The radio stayed off the whole drive home and we both jumped when a motorcycle roared past us at a red light. Our house felt wrong, too normal with its regular smell of coffee and laundry detergent. Dad made spaghetti, but I just pushed it around my plate while my phone kept buzzing with messages from everyone asking why Ms. Brown didn't let us hide. That night I couldn't sleep, just kept replaying those 40 minutes over and over. The next morning an automated call from the district said school was canceled indefinitely and counselors would be available at the community center. Mom called in sick to stay home with me, but I locked my bedroom door and sat on my bed thinking about how we almost didn't barricade, how we almost stayed at our desks like Ms. Brown wanted. Channel 8 had our school on every commercial break, and then Ms. Brown's face filled the screen, standing in her driveway telling the reporter she maintained control during chaos and her students were alive because she didn't panic. Mom grabbed the remote and threw it so hard it cracked the TV screen. Tyler sent me a link to someone's cell phone video from Mr. Peterson's dark classroom showing everyone hidden and silent while Ms. Brown's voice carried through the walls talking about manufactured fear. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. right when she was locking the light switch. The video had 50,000 views in 2 hours and the comments were brutal. I spent the next day in my room jumping every time the house creaked or a car door slammed outside. Mom brought soup I didn't touch and the group chat kept going off about lawyers and lawsuits, but I couldn't focus on any of it. Principal Foster called that evening with his careful principal voice saying the district needed my written statement about Ms. Brown's actions, separate from the police investigation. Mom grabbed the phone and told him I'd provide it through our attorney, which was news to me since I didn't know we were getting one. The next morning, Ben's mom drove him over because he needed to talk to someone who was there, someone who understood. We sat on my front porch and he kept starting sentences he couldn't finish about almost staying in his seat, about what would have happened if I hadn't turned off those lights. His hands were shaking just like mine were. Tyler's parents dropped him off later that afternoon and we went straight to the backyard where the picnic table sat under the big oak tree. He rolled up his jeans and showed me the dark purple bruises covering both his knees from when he'd wedged himself behind the chemical storage shelves in that supply closet. His voice stayed flat when he told me how the shots kept getting closer, and he knew I was 2 halls away but couldn't do anything about it. We sat there for an hour, not really talking about it, but not talking about anything else either, while his fingers picked at the splintered wood on the table. Day 5 started with Mom on the phone scheduling appointments, and by noon she'd found found Rebecca Thompson, this lawyer who specialized in school safety cases. Her office downtown had newspaper clippings covering every wall, headlines about negligence lawsuits and safety violations at schools across the state. Rebecca looked at Mom's notes and said, what Ms. Brown did went beyond poor judgment, that keeping students exposed during an active shooter situation was criminal endangerment. There's something unsettling about how Mrs. Brown keeps insisting this is all fake, even with those gunshots echoing through the halls. What makes a teacher so convinced that actual danger isn't real when every other classroom is already dark and hidden? She explained how other families were already filing civil suits, but criminal charges would be up to the district attorney's office. The community meeting on day 6 turned into chaos. The second Ms. Brown walked through the civic center doors with her union representative, parents started screaming immediately while she just stood there with that same controlled expression she'd had during the shooting, repeating that she'd followed her professional judgment. Someone threw a water bottle that hit the wall behind her, and security guards had to form a circle around her to get her back outside. The detective called that same night with a question that made my whole body go cold, asking if Ms. Brown had ever mentioned Jake Wilson in class since he'd been her student 3 years ago. Jake Wilson was the name everyone knew through whispers and group texts, but the news wouldn't say yet. Day 7 morning. I finally made myself shower and change out of the clothes I'd been wearing for days. Dad stood at the stove making pancakes like any other Sunday, but we both jumped when the doorbell rang. Just the delivery guy dropping off a package, but that split second of panic was becoming our new normal. That evening, the news finally confirmed what everyone already knew, showing Jake's yearbook photo from when he graduated.